here knows about Insane Clown Posse? Okay, I don't know when, but at some point they stopped becoming common knowledge to today's teenagers. But I'm sure you've seen a Juggalo, because they're really out there. They've been terrorizing conservative parents since the early 90s. And you might tell right away that not everyone is going to appreciate their particular brand of stink.
They're not clowns. They're insane Satan posse. That's what it is.
And regardless of that, like, their whole style has been so cinematic from the very beginning. It's always been about story writing and aesthetic and costumes and visuals. If there's anyone that deserves a cinematic universe, it's these guys. Now, I mean, by no means, that's not to say that these guys are what anyone would call high-class artists. I mean, the nicest way you could probably describe it is lowbrow.
Come on, kicked me out, the bastards.
Yeah.
They could stick it up their pooper, because I ain't going back in there.
Full of poop, too.
You know, and I say that because they're not always known to make the most tasteful or meaningful choices. The one area you can pretty much always expect them to never make it classy is when they're going for the comedy thing.
What the? Hello?
Speak to Red Nuts.
Who?
Red Balls. Willie Redneck Balls. Is he there?
God damn it!
Who wouldn't want to go see a feature-length comedy movie written, produced, and starring Insane Clown Posse? Apparently Violent J saw this homemade hip-hop comedy called Big Ballers, which I had no idea existed, but apparently it inspired Violent J to make his own trashy movie with no budget.
Oh, baby, can I hit the joint?
The joint or the joint?
So in the year 2000, with a total budget of $350,000, they released their direct-to-video movie, Big Money Hustlas. And yes, I do feel a little bit like a douche saying hustlas, but that's what it's called. So the movie starts off, and we get right up front a big onboarding of what I'll probably just refer to as this movie's great taste, and let's just say subtlety and timing. There's this preacher who's dressed like Vincent Price in Witchfinder General, officiating a funeral. And he's standing there just shouting at this group of sobbing people that the key to their salvation is their money. And Shaggy 2 Dope is casually sitting in the middle of this in clown makeup, and he's dressed like a 70s pimp. Apparently this movie is, I guess, what you could call an homage to the 1975 movie Dolomite, which is about a pimp who gets out of prison and takes down the corrupt criminals and the corrupt law enforcement in like the grooviest way possible. And you could say that Dolomite was part of a film movement that popularized that burlesque pimp look, which eventually made its way through American culture and into the children's Halloween costume section. Because in case you forgot, it was even as late as the year 2000 when this movie was made that people still thought human trafficking was funny and cool. And because of that phenomenon, we get to see all these super silly hats on Shaggy 2 Dope in this movie. So this movie basically shares those rough contours of Dolomite, with Shaggy 2 Dope playing the unconventional detective named Sugar Bear who goes up against Violent J and his crime boss character Big Baby. So with that said, the reason why Dolomite was such a memorable movie was purely because it was such a good vehicle for Rudy Ray Moore's thrusting charisma, which clearly carried the whole thing.
That's for fucking with me, you no business born insecure motherfuckers!
So the question that's going to remain is, does Shaggy 2 Dope and Violent J have enough character to carry this movie the same way he did? So to answer that question, there's a few things that need to be pointed out, and I'll start with what I think is the most important one. Because for many, this is very easily going to be what might be considered a deal breaker. Assuming that the idea of a Juggalo comedy movie didn't already turn you off, right? Sugar Bear. He rhymes all the lines in his movie.
The name is Sugar Bear. I'm sweet and fuzzy like a pear.
I mean, it's such a strenuous limitation to put on yourself when you're writing a script. Like, when the result, it's only gonna make your movie or show or whatever it is that you're making more annoying. I gotta say, for someone whose day job is being a rapper, the thing Shaggy does with words to make a rhyme is a lot like butchering a cow with a hammer.
This could taste a whole lot better if you ain't getting wild for your cheddar.
like on another note, because it takes so much work for Sugar Bear to utter a single thought, you know, because it always has to rhyme, find him just silently standing, watching what's going on, because his freedom to react and make quick comments is so limited by this need to have a complete rhyme in everything he says.
And most important is right here, the donut hut. It's where me and most of my fellow officers of the law spend our nights, days, you know, whatever. Can you blame us? Look over there.
And I don't know how bad you think this rhyming thing really is, but it's a lot like getting an ulcer in your mouth. In the beginning, you think you're just going to tolerate it and maybe you'll forget about it. But then when he starts talking on screen, it's kind of like you accidentally eat something salty, and at that point, you just want to, each time it gets worse and worse, you want to amputate your lip after a while.
Hey, Sugar, were you able to make them talk?
No hints, no clues, no leads, no traces. I'm getting sick of all three of their goddamn faces.
All right, now then there's Violent J. He is the man behind all the major crime in the big city. Now, I want to stop here and just point out the fact that Violent J wrote this script, and allegedly it took him 1 month. And yet it's still, at the end of the day, what he ended up deciding to do is improvise all his lines during filming. You know, which is one of those things that I feel like if you succeed at and do a really good job at, that could be a really cool gimmick for an actor. In this particular situation, the whole shtick that Violent J came up with for his lines was all this.
With my money.
With my motherfucking money.
What's up on my money, motherfucker? My motherfucking money! You got my money, motherfucker! He's fucking with my money!
So unlike Sugar Bear's character, he didn't have to rhyme all his lines, and yet his dialogue is still more one-dimensional than Sugar Bear's. Okay, now here are two of my favorites. Thankfully, to spice things up a little bit, Big Baby has two goons. And as a very important source of comic relief, they are appropriately named Lil Poot and Big Steak. And they're played by the disgraced Juggalos Twisted, which kind of makes me laugh because if you look on that side of their career, you kind of get this impression that these people really want to have this intimidating and masculine mystique, and yet somehow want that aesthetic to mix with comedy like this.
You need to bring back this money. Bring back this money.
And their solitary role in this movie is to Big Baby's hype beasts, which really all that means in the end is just that they repeat everything Big Baby says, except just a lot stupider.
You don't come up with my money, I'ma smoke that ass.
24 hours. You don't come up with this motherfucking money, I'ma smoke that ass. Yeah, bitch. 24 motherfucking hours. Yep.
So, these guys, they're like improv night at the halfway house. This one guy here, he has this girl that gives him such a speech impediment. Yeah, I couldn't honestly tell if they were just trying to ignore it when it's clearly unignorable, or they somehow thought it was funny.
My tactics!
Yo, tactics!
But gosh, it's one of those things where if you ever hear somebody start talking and they has their mouth starts smacking, like they have major cotton mouth, and they don't take care of it right away, like they just keep talking with that, your brain starts begging you to fix it, like somehow. It just makes your skin crawl.
Or, they've just moved on into, a good rock band or whatever. And any band that's around now call themselves death metal are basically just bandwagon jumpers. And, I'm always a bit suspect of anyone who labels the music such a generic sort of limiting, category.
And the last big character I'm going to describe is Harland Williams, who plays the cleverly named character
Harry Cox is all over this, sir. Harry Cox, 9120505.
I guess I don't know what I should have expected. This is the one actual actor in this movie, and I kind of respect him for that. It's like, I think it's kind of cool that he'd be willing to be in a movie like this. Harland Williams, at the very least, is a performer who kind of knows his brand of goofiness, which is possibly the main thing this movie needed more of. And he's clearly the only one in this movie with those instincts. And boy, you really see this guy straining to pull a scene together sometime.
Look, I'm a donut gentleman from London. Hello there, son. Would you like me to rub a crumpet all over your bubbly little bottom? It's a little thing I do with donuts.
The main thing that I want to say he probably represents about this movie is the mean streak this movie has in its humor. It seemed like somebody involved thought the best way to get a movie into the comedy mood was by just mixing in a bunch of abuse.
God damn it, Crocs, I tell you to take that stupid fucking head up when you come in my office, you prick! Get up, you fucking... Get up! Get up! Get up, you fuck!
And boy, they really kept trying hard at making treating other people badly look funny.
Are you stuck in that goddamn chair again?
Get Cox in here.
Got it, Chief. You want it in your ass or in your mouth?
Get Cox, I said, you fuck!
Like, of course, Sugar Bear just condescends to Williams' character the whole time. And I just want to reach through the screen and say, don't let them do this to you, Harland. You have the power to make this movie funny. Speaking of the general comedy of this movie, they are slinging what I would call reckless humor, which all in all I actually prefer in most cases. Because while you're likely to deal with a lot more cheese grater humor, which I have a lot of tolerance for, I guess, you still get these gems of outlandish humor that is just too absurd to not be funny. And those are the happy accidents that only exist in reckless humor. For instance, that bit where this police chief fervently lusts after his own ass.
Oh, that's a fucking ass. Oh.
But here's the thing about that. Make it as stupid as you want. Pace it fast enough, I can take it. This movie has more fat to trim than the Insane Clown Posse guys' livers.
Big, baby, sweet.
You know, some movies you want to just slowly sip, while other movies like this one, you would just want to kind of guzzle, take it and take shots of it. You don't want to sip every dumb line.
You got my money, motherfucker.
This movie just shamelessly puts its ugly parts in front of your face and just forces you to sniff it. I want to bring this scene up because I think it does a really good job demonstrating what I like and what I don't like about this movie. So Big Baby, he has these characters who are all sitting around this table with him, who each have like this preferred method of crime to make money for Big Baby. Something I like about it is it's in these scenes with Big Baby where the movie is at its most cartoonish. Like, look at the set and the costumes. I don't think I'm ever gonna see a movie put leopard print on walls and it not make me at least a little bit happy. And that's the thing I wish they leaned into a little bit more in this movie, like a live action cartoon movie. It was a shame that they didn't have the opportunity to take some notes on Terror Toons before making this movie, because they would see that you don't necessarily need a budget, you just need to be a little bit more in touch with your insanity. You know, and then of course, some of these characters touch on ideas that are weird enough to fall into the category of like that butt lust guy. You know, there's this gold dude, the guy who breaks the fourth wall to do an infomercial.
Give a fuck about what the producers of this film say. Would you please put the number on the screen?
This guy who makes bootleg clothing with potty talk stuck in. Like, if these items aren't ironically on the market already, there's just like a huge missed opportunity in my opinion. I am more than willing to waste my money on a Master P hat, in Adidas. And then a little less impressive than that idea is again this corrupt clergyman. The idea was it was already low-hanging fruit when they hammered it in at the beginning of the movie.
Money!
Lastly is the
Miss Fat Titty Kitty.
And Violent J makes sure he goes out of his way to demean her, of course.
He's a cop from Frisco. He's the baddest cop on the force. I heard he took the entire Frisco cartel on by himself. I heard that motherfucker swallowed a hand grenade to save a bunch of refugees and shit. He's one bad motherfucker.
Now there's an Oscar waiting to happen.
You asshole. Like, is there anything about her acting that is somehow worse than anyone else in this movie? This 10+ minute scene was to do what? Was to demonstrate what for this movie? It was to show us, one, that the ape suit was one of Big Baby's henchmen, and that kind of moved along Sugar Bear's story and how he's going to combat Big Baby.
Fuck is this motherfucker fucking with my motherfucking money?
That took a few seconds. And then two, you tack on all these characters as accessories to Big Baby's aesthetic, which is great. But it took them 10 minutes to do that. And I'm curious what others will think of this, both in terms of taste and in terms of like movie making. Completely out of left field, Sugar Bear goes to a strip club and falls in love with a woman that he describes as
every man's fantasy, every man's dream girl, right before my eyes.
And so for the next 10 or so minutes, you get to just watch Sugar Bear courting this woman. And this is notable for a lot of reasons. There's like about halfway through it, there's these little scenes that start popping up of Big Baby and his squad committing these crimes, as though the movie was like acknowledging to the audience that it really just completely left the original plot in the dust, when all they really ended up wanting to do was just take that time and use it to make sex and food jokes surrounding this woman. So, at the end of it, Harland Williams, he calls Sugar Bear and is like, hey, like, you remember this plot we were a part of just a few minutes ago? It's time to get back.
In the last 24 hours.
Look here, brother. I've been in love.
This whole next bit is unacceptable. And so, Sugar Bear just immediately, pretty much without anything happening, goes and arrests Big Baby and his goons. It was one of the few things given only a few seconds of screen time.
Freeze, motherfuckers! Don't even breathe!
And it's only to make room for this grating interrogation sequence.
I know you two sons of bitches had something to do with that supermarket blowing up in fucking flames last night.
It was Big Baby Sweets, man. We didn't want to do what he made up.
Sure did, man. If we didn't do it, he's gonna kill us both, man. He'll kill me too.
And by the end of it all, they just are just sitting there letting them go because they didn't get a good lead. So the whole thing was just pointless. I mean, I guess you could say it was sort of an excuse for like segueing into the next bit, where we get yet another long Big Baby monologue saying again the same stuff.
But when you fuck with my money,
you get that, motherfucker. You get jumped in your throat.
That's right, folks. There's more. I mean, just the faith they have for some of these gimmicks is unbelievable. So, like, the next part, Big Baby, he decides, because he got arrested, to retaliate by summoning magic ninjas. Which, that sounds like a kind of spunky idea. I accept that. And I was a little bit excited when I heard that. And, they pop up, but the thing is they end up just being about as funny as you really should be expecting by now. And what they end up doing is sending them to go kill Sugar Bear's big girlfriend, And what this leads to is just more pontificating on Sugar Bear's girlfriend eating and being active, just in case, there were just a few laughs still stuck at the bottom of the barrel to scrape up. And this is all done to the sound of ICP's music, and we get mostly an off-screen death of Sugar Bear's girlfriend. Which then, in turn, will push Sugar Bear to get depressed and give up on life. Really, what actually all this is leading up to is the star cameo for this whole movie. Who else comes onto the scene but Rudy Ray Moore to give Sugar Bear a pep talk?
Who said that?
No business born insecure, bow-legged, cross-eyed, pigeon-toed, dilapidated motherfucker.
Not only is it just kind of fun to see Rudy Ray Moore, but his dialogue during these scenes that he's in are completely priceless. It's so amazing.
If you was hanging on to my dick any harder, you'd be my nutsack. You know?
And then there's a whole training montage backed by the Human Tornado, which Rudy Ray Moore sang, despite the fact that this is a Dolomite spoof. I'm guessing the reason they got the Human Tornado as the song was probably has more to do with the fact that they could afford the licensing for it. Bam, like at the end, Rudy Ray Moore vanishes from this movie without a trace, you know, and they kind of referenced that a little bit, kind of cute.
Forget about Dolomite. The budget on the flick ran out for Dolomite. He took off running. What do you think, he's gonna do this shit for free?
All of a sudden, here we are at the climax where Sugar Bear has his final confrontation with Big Baby. So, the questions are, will Sugar Bear win the fight over New York? Will he survive the battle with the Magic Ninjas? Find out by watching Big Money Hustlas. I can at least say it involves a mad scientist, a poop joke, and a wrestling match with Nick Foley. Don't miss it. Okay? So now, I've properly scrutinized this movie to death, okay? And I've acknowledged its shortcomings pretty clearly. Now I want to take a moment to stick up for it a little. I think from the highest level overview of this movie, I think it's fair to say that more so than just being another movie, you know, this is a movie that has ICP in it. Probably most of the people who are excited to see this movie for the first time, most likely were watching this with some sort of history already existing with Insane Clown Posse, which kind of makes me recontextualize like all these random and oddly specific cameos and the fourth wall breaks and things like that. It sort of makes me want to think of this less of like a comedy movie and more of a community video, so to speak. You know, and what I mean is, like, when you go to watch family videos, you're going to engage and find humor in it that you wouldn't have found if it wasn't somebody that you know. So, like, I think it's far more fair to treat the humor in this more like that. Like, this is an inside thing, an inside joke. Like, I'm sure that these guys making idiots of themselves in front of everyone was hilarious to everyone who on set who was really invested in their careers and of trying to be like these spooky rappers. And while it may be true that I kind of felt like I had my face buried in unwashed Juggalo ass for like an hour and a half watching this, I could still somehow see myself watching it late at night with some buddies, as long as like Four Loko was involved or something like that. And an ICP movie seems like it was kind of like an inevitable thing after all these years of serving up such degenerate multimedia. And at the end of the day, it's at the very least a piece of novelty merch that would really it'd look good next to my Cannibal Corpse G-string. So, recommended.